Good morning. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. I appreciate it very much. It's amazing to be here, and I will show more gratitude in a moment. But first, I just want to say, so I'm Jordan. I go all over the world, and I work with companies, schools, organizations on building cultures of belonging. Now, what the hell does that mean? It means that most of us, throughout our day, and our work day, and our private life, we sort of live over here. Here is where we feel like we're a bit of an imposter, where we feel like we're faking it, where we feel like we're maybe exaggerating it a bit, maybe like we're putting on a bit of a mask. And what happens when we're over here in this position is we don't feel like we're enough. And my work is all about getting people to take a little bit of a step over here to where you can feel more belonging. What does belonging mean then? It means that you have ownership, pride, that you trust yourself in your role, and that you feel like you are genuinely enough to be here, to be part of this team and this organization. It's very much a one-to-one thing. It's how you feel about your work. It also has to do, of course, with traditional team building, about how you feel about being part of an organization, how you feel about being part of a movement. But more so, it's something that you manifest yourself. I'll come back to that. So when I say a culture of belonging, what are some companies that might come to mind, or organizations or businesses of any sort that may have a culture of belonging, where you see their employees just be hyper-engaged and very passionate? What comes to mind?
Facebook.
Facebook, okay. Any others?
Indigo.
Indigo, that's a good one. Any others? Is that Google, I heard? Okay. Any others? May I suggest hospitality? Who knows Rooster Espresso Bar? Over on King East? Yeah? They have another one on Broadview and Church and Bloor. If you want to understand workplace belonging, go out and hang in there for an afternoon. It is astounding. The way that you see the staff engage with the owners engage with the staff engage with the clients, and just the overall mood. It's very clear that everyone is as they should be. They're very confident in their role. It's a beautiful thing. But those are great examples as well. And in fact, Google is a very interesting example because not long ago, I got off the stage after a speaking gig, and someone from Google walked up to me. And they gave me their card. They said, "Hey, I'm from Google." I was like, "That's cool, okay." What's up? They said, "You need to come and speak at Google." I said, "Why? Like, you guys would, like, what could I possibly help you with? You're tackling these huge things, like, what do you need?" I said, "Look, yeah, we're doing cool stuff. The work is great. We're a really engaged group of people. However, Google is this huge, iconic brand. And the problem with our teams is we're like, well, who am I to work at Google? Who am I to work for this big, iconic company that's changing the face of our digital lives? Who am I?" And then in my own smart-ass way, I responded with, "Well, who are you not to work there?" And he said, "No, I'm serious." He went on to explain that they have productivity issues, they have retention issues like crazy, and they do have workplace culture and happiness issues. And it's true. When you look at the numbers, some departments have amazing retention and amazing engagement. But the problem with Google, and like all big companies, is there's a lot going on. And he went on to explain, and I'll never forget this. He said, "I don't feel like I can belong at Google." And then he actually said the words, which were just music to my ears: "I feel like an imposter." So, you guys are sprinting to the beginning line, the starting line of an ultra marathon right now. And I'm very curious if we can just be honest for a moment and get a show of hands on a scale of 1 to 3. Who's feeling a little nervous and uneasy about the path ahead? It's going to be a pretty wild, 6 months, 8 months? Okay, so let's go with this. So 1 to 3. So 1 being not at all nervous, like, I got this, everything is hunky-dory, we're going to nail this, I'm nailing my role. 1. Okay. 2 being, I'm a little nervous. I'm sort of nervous, I feel like I got a handle on it, but I'm not really sure. So 2. Okay? Okay. And now here's the moment of truth. 3. Who's like, "Oh yeah, we got some problems." A little bit. Or maybe not problems, but maybe, yeah, I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable in the middle of the night. Okay, there we go. That's what's made for. Okay. So, it's all okay. The challenge is, if you're genuinely not feeling like you have a clear ownership over your role, what's going to happen is things over time are going to start to slip. You're going to start to fake it, kind of incrementally. You're going to start saying that, yes, I know exactly what's going on, that report is going to be done, I know exactly how to do this task, it's going to be amazing. But then what happens? You're making up for that. So you've told a little bit of a white lie. No big deal, keeps everyone happy, right? But what happens is you have to go on and you start lying a little bit more, and a little bit more, a little bit more, and soon all your energy is going towards just sort of propping up this image like you know what's going on, when really inside you're like, holy shit. Okay? So it's really important to start calling yourself on that and calling your colleagues on that too. I'm going to give you 4 strategies and stories to help you think about that constructively every day. Before I go there, though, I want to say that I've had the amazing pleasure of talking to about 300 leaders, CEOs, politicians, change makers of different sorts about exactly this. What we're talking about here is not at all just for small and medium-sized organizations or more youthful groups like this. It is everyone in every industry at all levels of seniority. Okay? So, 4 stories, 4 takeaways, 4 questions you can ask yourselves every day. Story 1. Center for Social Innovation used to have a dean of social innovation, and his name is Mike Bursick. He's a dear friend of mine. Mike has this amazing company called Sacred Rides Mountain Bike Tours. National Geographic called it the best mountain bike tourism company in the world, which is pretty badass. The company's been around for 20 years, and they've been growing steadily. They do good revenue. They have about 40 staff all over the world. And he told me in a conversation recently, which was then published in a podcast that I have, so I can say this comfortably publicly, that last year he almost tanked the business. And why did he almost tank the business? Because his ego got in the way. Although he didn't know it at the time, he was just very afraid. He was feeling a little bit of fear. Day to day, he was thinking, oh God, my employees are going to figure out that I don't know what's going on with this new expansion of our product offering, and I'm freaking out, and oh no. And without consulting anyone, any of his advisors, his mentors, his employees, his clients, his contractors, his friends, his family, he made a bunch of jerky decisions. What ended up happening? They were this close to declaring bankruptcy. And it wasn't until he got given a copy of a new book that's fantastic called Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday that he realized, oh man, my ego was what was driving that fear. Because I built this company, I've lived in this role for so long that I don't want to let anyone else down. I don't want to let anyone know that I don't know what I'm doing. So he pretended he knew. So the question we can ask ourselves from that, and from Mike's actions since, is how did my ego hold me back today? How did my ego hold me back today? All of these questions, as we're going through it, I've gone through an exercise in the last little while where I have these 4 questions written down and I ask myself every single day. And I take a couple notes. So how did my ego get in the way? So it can either be a positive thing or a negative thing. In Mike's case, his ego was getting in the way because he was making stupid decisions based upon his own fear. What's happened since, though, is Mike has started to collectively engage his employees and his clients. He set a new goal to talk to 5 clients every single day. It keeps them humble, keeps them honest, keeps them clear. What's happened? In 6 months, he's turned around the business, and they're now planning their biggest expansion over the next 4 years and raising another round of venture capital. If his ego stayed in the way, the company would be overrun. So how did my ego get in my way today? Question 1. Story 2. Who knows the band Arkells? Yeah. Okay. So Max Kerman, the frontman, and I had a conversation recently. And yes, he is my band crush, 100%. And he told me this amazing story. Last year, they got booked to do a 5-week US tour. And although Arkells are really popular here, no one really knows them in the US. They're doing okay, but they're not doing great. So the tour guarantees for the dates aren't really that good. But they had a choice. They could either do the 5-week tour in their van, in their trailer, and go all over the US. There's going to be tons of overnight drives. Apparently, it was crisscrossing the country a bunch of times. Or, alternatively, they could rent a bus. Tour buses are super expensive because you get a driver, you have to pay for the bus, you have to pay for the fuel, the upkeep, everything else. So basically, every cent they would make on that tour would go into this bus. But Max fought like hell to get the bus. And why did he do that? Because he knew that if they spent more money on a bus, that it was going to be an investment in the band. How? Because they had to play really well on this tour in order to gain more foothold in the US. 1. Secondly, He wanted a situation where they could wake up every morning in a new city, refreshed, having not slept on the bench of a van all night, being relaxed, being able to go for a run, out for a healthy meal, grab a coffee, and then talk about business. Why was that so important? Because at the time, they were planning their record, which was just released 2 weeks ago, and it's fantastic. And they recorded it with 4 different producers. So they were sorting out the logistics of who's going to record what, when, and where. And in a band, in a 5-person band, those conversations can get very hairy. So it was important that Max fought for the bus so that they could have the time and space to be their best selves on stage and off stage. They wanted to be a high-performing, effective, accountable band to one another, and they needed to make the investment in order for that to happen. You guys are a band. You are a traveling band. You're going to be bebopping all over the place. So it's important that you ask yourself every day, now and while you're traveling and afterwards, what have I done for my band today? Because talking to Max, what I realized is that his ownership he feels over that band is actually a little different than you think. It's not about being the front man. It's about being the facilitator. And he knows that by doing things like fighting for a tour bus, that what ends up happening is he's offered more value to his fellow bandmates, therefore making him proud of his role in the band, right? Because it's his way of saying, guys, I got you, and they love him for it as well. So he feels more ownership as the front man because he's proven it. Okay? So what have you done for your band today? Okay, so the first question, ego, is all about yourself, right? How are you taking your fear out of the equation? The second is about how are you being service to others? And by no means am I suggesting go and do the work for other people. I'm merely suggesting provide value. Be cognizant and aware so that your other team members can function at their highest abilities as well. Okay. Story number 3. A friend of mine from childhood, Kate Howell, is a journalist at the Huffington Post. And last fall, just after Trudeau got elected, it was announced that Trudeau was going to do a Facebook Live town hall with Huffington Post. And it was going to be streamed out live. And it was probably like a month or so after he got elected. So it was very quick after. 2 days before that, the editor pulls everyone into a meeting at Huffington Post and say, Kate, so here's what's going down. So we got Justin Trudeau in 2 days. We're going to do this town hall. Everyone's excited. Rah, rah, rah. However, tomorrow, you are going to go with a cameraman. And you are going to go to U of T. And you are going to interview 2 grad students on foreign policy. And you're going to get their thoughts. And not only that, but because that is going to be our trial run for the actual live stream, we're going to co-promote it with Facebook and see what kind of traffic numbers we can get. So we're going to try to get about 300,000 people to watch it. And Kate was like, awesome, I got it. Don't worry about it, guys. She's used to being on camera. It's all good. So she was psyched. And then she leaves the room. And it hits her. Oh, shit. I don't know anything about Canadian foreign policy. What am I going to say? What am I going to do? And so she did what a lot of us would do back in high school and college and university, which is go home and cram. So she actually went home and got these 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper, and she wrote down everything she could on Canadian foreign policy in one night. She woke up the next morning on her bed, still clothed from the night before, just like a mess. And she runs to the interview because she's running late. She shows up, she gives her introduction on camera, she gets the other people talking, she goes back to the office afterwards, she goes into her boss's office and she says, I am so sorry, I totally tanked that, I don't know what I was thinking. He was like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? She's like, I'm sorry, do you want my letter of resignation? Like, that was just awful. And he said, like, no, like, it was fine. Like, it wasn't your best work, no offense, but it wasn't your worst either. Just like, it's all good. She's like, oh, I can't believe this. So then she comes on a podcast that I co-host with a friend of mine. And she hadn't watched this video before. But in our own sneaky way, we had it already ready to go. So we eventually got to the point where she was willing to watch the video and see how bad she actually did. Turns out, she was great. Maybe a couple stutters here or there, but we're only human. The comments on the video were overwhelmingly positive. And the funniest part is that she was so nervous about how other people were viewing her and how she came off that she didn't even realize that the camera wasn't pointed at her. For the introduction and the questions it was, but otherwise it was just her arm holding a microphone in front of these 2 grad students. We started talking on that episode with Kate about trusting your worth, trusting what got you there in the first place. What got Kate the job at Huffington Post was not her Canadian foreign policy excellence, and it'd be silly to for her to believe that, which she did. Because we always believe that stuff, right? When we see something come across our paths that we believe, we have to dominate it and know. It's very challenging. So, she was reminded, and it was a reminder for us as well, trust what got you there, right? Trust what got you guys here to this role today. You were hired from hundreds of applicants per role, I am sure, because of the in-demand nature of your organization. Trust what got you here. And when you run into something that you don't know, or you feel uneasy about figuring out, understand that that's not a reflection of you or your worth. It's just something you have to tackle and achieve. So the third question is, how have you trusted yourself today? Or how have you not trusted yourself today? Last story. And this one's going to sound unbelievable, but it is true. During the viral hoopla that Christiane mentioned, I once ended up having dinner with Ryan Reynolds, which was as awkward as you can imagine. He was. This is going to be Hollywood lingo, but he was attached to this Hollywood movie that's coming out about the whole stupid thing. And he was going to play the lead character, which again is just really weird. He's not anymore though, but he was at this time. So it's really painfully awkward. I sort of like go into this hotel lobby. He sent me this email before through his assistant that was forwarded to me that said, "Tell Jordan that I'm not a creep, but I'm going to be wearing a tuxedo to go meet him." And I was like, what? And then I kept reading, and it turned out he had a fundraiser for Michael J. Fox right afterwards, so he had to wear a tuxedo. Anyway, I thought it was funny. So we sit down, I have a drink, I'm finally like, okay, this is not awkward. But they kept saying things like, I'd be talking about my previous relationship, and he'd be like, oh yeah, it sounds a lot like when me and Alanis split up. I'm like, no, like, not even close. I asked him after that point, I was like, all right, let's get real. What was the difference between your awesome movies and your shitty movies? Like, what was the difference to you? Because he's been very hot and cold. And he took a pause, and he said, honestly, man, the movies where I wasn't faking my role, the movies that I always do best in are the ones where the role is most like me. Because I'm just like a less obnoxious version of Van Wilder. That's all I am. So it's important that while definitely I own the role, what I've realized is it's critical the role doesn't own me. It's an insightful gap. The lesson I took away from that is, it's really easy to end up over time morphing a little bit, right? As you're in your role and becoming the person your role needs you to be. But again, not only trust what got you here, but also remember who you are and why you were selected for that role. And don't let that take away from you. Because if you remember who you are in that role, you can own the role. And then you can strive for excellence and high performance because you will have the confidence and awareness to understand that you deserve ownership over your work. You deserve ownership over everything that happens because of the work that you do. Okay? So the question is, how did I own my role today? How did I own my role today? Okay. So here's the beautiful thing, guys. We Day is all about belonging. I'm not going to get too meta, but it's really important to understand that these little things that we've talked about, these 4 principles, and again, ego, what you do for your band, trusting yourself, owning your role. Okay? If anyone wants these, I can email them. Those 4 things are absolutely essential to you guys feeling that pride and ownership over your work with this organization that is going to attract others. The amazing thing about We Day is you have one day to make thousands of other people believe in this organization and feel the same belonging that you do. That is how Mark and Craig started this organization. It started because they genuinely belonged in the work that they were doing, and you can feel that positive energy. It is absolutely essential that you guys focus on that while you're focusing on your own execution. And the more you focus on your ownership of your role, and of course your belonging in it, and your pride and trusting yourself and limiting your ego and all these things that we just talked about, what's going to happen is you're going to be more able to leave an impact after We Day among yourselves and the attendees. And when I think of an organization like yours, which is one that I've admired for a very long time, that's really been the primary driver of what's allowed you guys to change the world And I also believe that's going to be what will drive you ahead going forward. With that, I'm incredibly excited for you guys. It's going to be a hell of a string of Wii Days. I can't wait to see what happens from the sidelines. If there's any support I can ever provide to any of you about some of this, about owning your role and feeling this sense of confidence, I'm more than happy to make myself available. I know in 20 minutes we can only scratch the surface, but there's a lot of tools, tricks, resources that go underneath this stuff. So please feel free to reach out. Thank you again for having me. I hope this was a helpful way to start the day. And just enjoy the day. This is going to be fantastic, guys.